Kare with you.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to The World This Week. This week we shall be discussing the US primary elections with a focus on Donald Trump and his little spat with the Pope. We'll then move on to the dictatorial trap, and following that we'll move on to Sean's piece about his global beer this week, and we'll end about privacy rights and whether the government should have access to your information on your smartphones. So I'll just say hi to everyone here, and we'll move on to Carla, who shall be introducing her topic. So, hi, Carla.
Hello. So last week, yet another Trump-related controversy happened. Not only did the current president of the United States, Barack Obama, say at a press conference in California that he believes that Donald Trump would not become president because it's a serious job, but last Thursday, arguably the most influential religious leader in the world, Pope Francis, on his way back from a 6-day visit to Mexico, was asked about Trump's proposal for building a wall on the US-Mexico border, to what he replied by saying that a person who thinks like that is not Christian. This was his exact quote. A person who thinks only about building walls, wherever they may be, and not building bridges is not Christian. This is not in the gospel. As far as what you said about whether I would advise to vote or not to vote, I'm not going to get involved in that. I say only that this man is not Christian if he says things like that. We must see if he said things in that way, and in this I give the benefit of the doubt. Now, as far as I know, Trump did say things in that way, so I don't think benefit of the doubt will really help the Pope. Shortly after Obama's comments, Trump said that he took being criticized by the president as a great compliment. However, Pope's criticism seems to have struck a nerve with him, probably because he likes and respects Pope a lot more than he likes and respects Obama. In 2013, he tweeted the following: "The new Pope is a humble man, very much like me, which probably explains why I like him so much." So, at a campaign rally in South Carolina last Thursday, Trump said that for a religious leader to question a person's faith is disgraceful. He also said that if and when the Vatican is attacked by ISIS, which as everyone knows is ISIS's ultimate trophy, I can promise you that the Pope would have only wished and prayed that Donald Trump would have been president, because this would not have happened. ISIS would have been eradicated, unlike what is happening now, with all talk, no action politicians. The Pope is being told that Donald Trump is not a nice person. Donald Trump is a very nice person. I am a very nice person, and I'm a very good Christian and proud of it. As a president, I would not allow Christianity to be consistently attacked and weakened, unlike what is happening now with our current president. No leader, and especially not a religious leader, should have the right to question another man's religion and faith. He even claimed that the Mexican government is using Pope as a pawn, and they should be ashamed of themselves for doing so, especially when so many lives are involved, and illegal immigration is so rampant and so dangerous and so bad for the United States. Trump's camp and supporters came to his aid as well. Dan Scavino, Trump's senior advisor and director of social media, pointed out on Twitter that even the city of Vatican, which is where the Pope resides, is surrounded by massive walls, which isn't exactly true. Vatican does have walls, but anyone can stroll through the Pope's front yard, which is St. Peter's Square, at nearly any time. Only metal detectors stand in your way. After Trump's response to Pope, the Vatican obviously felt the need to clarify that Francis wasn't questioning Trump's Christianity. According to NBC News, a Vatican spokesperson said on Vatican Radio on Friday, "The Pope said what we well know when we follow his teaching and his positions, that one mustn't build walls but bridges. He has always said this, continuously. And he has said it also about migration issues in Europe very many times. Thus, it's not at all a specific question limited to this case." Some other media outlets weren't very sympathetic of Vatican's statement. The Guardian's headline said the Pope walks back on his Trump comments, the Daily Mail wrote Trump triumphs over the Pope, and Huffington Post reported that Trump stares down Pope as Vatican backpedals. To make the situation even more bizarre, Trump was in damage repair mode only a few hours after he had attacked Pope, which is unusual for a man that tends to double down rather than retreat. This is what he said to CNN. "I don't like fighting with the Pope, actually. I don't think it's a fight. I think he said something much softer than originally reported by the media. I think that he heard one side of the story, which is probably by the Mexican government. I would argue that it was a good move, considering that around 22% of America's electorate are Catholic, and Trump has been quite popular with Catholics, especially conservative voters who think he's religious. Almost three-quarters of Republican registered voters who view Trump as very or somewhat religious say they think he would make a good or a great president. And just 41% of Republicans who say Trump is not religious at all think he would be a good or a great president. Moreover, the Catholic electorate consists of an increasingly large proportion of Latinos who I doubt support Trump's talk of a wall as well as his proposal to deport America's more than 11 million undocumented immigrants. So I believe that Trump must avoid giving them more reasons to dislike him if he expects to get their votes. So, do you think anybody makes sense in this war of words? And do you think that this overreaction has been one of the biggest mistakes of Trump so far?
Well, I find that Trump's opinions or the way he speaks seems to be resonating with his supporters, and that's his whole aim, like try and gather up support. Now, anyone makes sense, it's probably Pope Francis in the way that he speaks, and he's trying to get away from this negative stance, and he's clearly trying to get people to try and reconcile rather than separate and split. So I'm more Pope Francis' side on this. However, Trump, for me, just seems to be insulting his way to the top, as Jeb Bush said, you can't do. But he continues just to be insulting, and rather than backing down, as you're saying, he doubles down, and he just goes at it, and he does just stick to his position.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I believe the Pope actually makes way more sense than Trump, but Trump in general speaks more on. He improvises most of the time, so I believe that he often regrets what he says at first, and then he has to make reparations, so to speak. So
I don't think he regrets anything because when he's been asked, is there anything you would like to apologize for? Is there anything you're sorry about? He just answers, nope. So I would disagree. I don't think he regrets these things. I think it's very deliberate what he's doing. It's part of his tactic, the way he speaks, insults, whatever you want to call it.
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, he always tends to he never backs down from insults. He never backs down, and he doesn't apologize. But I do think that he sometimes quite he doesn't think about what he's doing. So his advisors have to get him out of hot water, so to speak. For instance, in this case, he obviously said what he was thinking, but then that same day, on that evening, he suddenly changed his position.
What relevance is the purposefulness of Trump's insults? At the end of the day, are we not discussing the harms that he may be bringing upon the American populace, specifically minorities, ethnic minorities, and religious minorities, both in the short term and in the long term? It doesn't seem to be too relevant as to whether he intends to insult, because the issue at the crux here is not form of offence, it's more of harms.
Yeah, I think we should stop seeing this as entertainment. We should stop laughing because it's not jokes anymore. I mean, this is entertainment. We like this. We think it's fun. You know, we like to watch this. Like, no matter how much you're against Trump, you have to admit that this is. I mean, it's entertaining. But we have to stop doing that because we have to realize that this is real life politics we're talking about. This is not some shit show you can laugh at on television. It's not Young Mom, right? Yeah, so we have to start seeing the harm that he does, like Seb says. And we have to see these jokes he does, these insults he does on television. We have to see that this is actually harming people. And if he gets the power, it could be dangerous, I think.
I suppose one contention is, which we may not agree with wholly, but one contention is that if we were to react with snark, I suppose, to see this as comedy, one objectively lends the hand of what Trump seeks to do, which is to persecute minorities and, according to some, institute a reign of fascism. Perhaps that's overblown, perhaps not.
Well, whether it is fascism or not, it's more worrying on my half is that he keeps on winning and he keeps on leading the polls. Every time he has some controversy, he gets media attention, and that's what he's doing. He's doing it really well, making sure that Donald Trump is being talked about and none of the other candidates. And so whether we take Trump's word to heart and think that he's actually meaning everything is one thing, or is he just playing the game and just making sure that he gets elected?
But what relevance does that question pose to us?
Well, if he's just playing the game and just getting himself elected, then what he's saying is a bit worrying in the sense that the American people agree with it, but it does not mean he's necessarily going to act on it. I doubt it, though. But
So, what you're trying to say is that this is a contention as to what he purports to act and as to what he will act were he to be elected to an executive position. Is that your contention?
well, the contention is that in the primary races, most people in the Republican Party shift right, and when they move on into the main round between Democrats and for the general election, they shift left again. The thing is, though, Trump is extreme right, and it's whether he recedes back towards the centre ground from that position. Because I don't believe his current position is electable, and I think he does know that as well on the general population.
Right. However, I would contend that perhaps we need to focus on the issue at hand, which is the fervent, this negative persuasiveness that's going through a large contingent of American populace at the moment needs to be examined, does it not? Because the issue here is that whoever were elected, we still have this undercurrent that may be used from whoever is elected according to negative ends.
I agree. Yeah, even if Trump does shift left, people did put him in power because he was so negative, and that undercurrent isn't going to just disappear. So that's a real worry. But unfortunately, we've got some time constraints, and we're going to have to move on. But we'll definitely continue this topic because obviously the primaries are running all the way through the year, and I'm sure Donald Trump will get back into the news. So unfortunately, we'll move on to, well, maybe fortunately, let's see. Sid, you've got dictatorial
Dictatorial trap.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about a phrase that I encountered earlier last week. It was called dictatorial trap. A dictatorial trap is a phrase when a leader came into power of a nation with clean heart and also won the position that he or she is fighting for with democracy. People elected this leader. When he or she came into power with democracy and for some period of time, he or she did what he or she need to do. However, after some period of time, the legitimacy of the leader started to decline. The declination, however, doesn't end with a turnover of power. Instead, the leader tends to stay longer for the fact that the leader gets attached to the position. Let me give you an example. Say, John says that he will improve the living condition of country Alpha. For 2 terms of his premiership, Alpha was blessed with economic progress and political freedom under John's premiership. However, when Alpha started to decline in terms of economy and social, as usual in democracy, people will demand for John to step down and no longer fight for the position in the next election. Now here's when John has fallen into the dictatorial trap. John has been so attached to his position as the Prime Minister or President or whatever, he tends to overrule people's voices and demands in democracy. He banned the freedom of press. He becomes more corrupt. He does more cheap play to buy off supporters like cash handouts or making viral news about his opposition scandal, etc. John then started to pass new law into legislation in order to maintain his power. Even if his cabinet started to protest him, he will dismiss the ministers. John plays more cards of an autocratic leader rather than the cards of a democratically elected leader. When this happens, John has turned into a dictator since he became desperate to maintain his position of power. This is why I call it a dictatorial trap, due to the fact that John has fallen into the trap and gets attached to the position he is in.
So this is quite easy to see. There's a lot of examples of this.
Mhm.
Mainly you see this in, I guess, new democracies. The first example that came to my head was thinking about Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe keeping on to power for years on years. Do you have any examples you would like to go into in detail?
I would like to use my own country, which is Malaysia. You see, Malaysia is very democratic in terms of the free and fair election that's been running through in our country for 50 years now since independence. However, in recent times, the Prime Minister gets so attached that he started to play more cheap play when it comes to cash handout. Recently, he became so attached to power that even the Deputy Prime Minister voiced his comment about how terrible the Prime Minister did in the last 2-3 years economically. He suddenly just dismissed the Deputy Prime Minister. He became a dictator, in my view. So this is when the Prime Minister in my country has fallen to the dictatorial trap.
Okay, so with this theory in hand, is there any way to that you think people stop having this? What preventative measures are there? Like, how would the people, without stop it, you can't just throw someone out?
It's very hard because this is where saying says that prevention is better than cure. Because this problem happens within the individual himself. If the individual doesn't think about having so much in his power, so there's no longer terms about dictatorial trap, but dictatorial trap, it really means that the person in power should control himself. That is the only way, because this is about prevention rather than solution. I can't really think about any solution for now.
But how does the military act, for example? And so some countries, they have a strong sense that the military has a duty to make sure this position happens. So if we think, the example that comes to my head is thinking about Pakistan, where the military regularly intervenes in politics to get rid of people. So you think, is that likely to happen in Malaysia?
In Malaysia, we have our own monarch, and this king controls the military. However, as I said, a leader who has fallen to the dictatorial trap tends to use all kind of measures in order to maintain his power. So people have been saying that our Prime Minister now has not seduced, but he do some saying to the king, control the king's mind, so that the king will not impose the military action towards the Prime Minister, because our king is very old now, he's like 88.
But doesn't he feel as though he has some responsibilities over this, or does he just lets the people decide what they do?
It's very hard to say, but when it comes to military, that's the only hope for Malaysians now in order to get rid of the Prime Minister.
I have one question. For example, in Spain, we have a monarchy too, and the king has the power to sign every time a bill is gonna be passed. He can sign if he wants to veto it or pass it. He always passes because he wants to make everyone feel like it's a democracy. Does the king in Malaysia have that power in case the prime minister?
This is the problem with Malaysia. I have read constitution. It says that any bill can be must be passed through the king by royal assent, as advised by the prime minister. Look at the sentence there. This is absurd because the king is advised by prime minister. That means that the prime minister has to say so that the king whether the king can really sign it or not to the law. The only way to restore democracy in Malaysia, this is the only thing that came to my mind right now, which is military action and also rebuild the constitution, look back at the constitution and really restore the balance of power within our nation.
But you said that the king is being advised by the prime minister, but he doesn't have to listen to him. He only he can choose if he wants to take his advice or not. Like, can he opt to not to take his advice?
That depends on the king. But now the king, we have actually Malaysia is very complicated due to the fact that we have 9 kings in our country. Every 5 years, there will be a king which is elected to be the king of kings. So one of these 9 kings is actually 88 years old. So we need to wait for another 5 years for the next king to be the king of Malaysia. So we're just hoping that the next king will be a younger one in order to really have his own stance towards the prime minister.
All right, well, that's really interesting. I didn't know about that theory beforehand, and
Yeah.
I'm sure other people would like to look into it. We'll move into a lighter topic, or is it a dark ale this time? Sure.
It's actually a dark one this week. Yeah. So this week we're looking at Piston Head Full Amber by a Swedish brewery. It's actually the best one I've tasted so far in this series. When you smell it, it actually comes across as quite caramelly or chocolatey, I find. I wasn't too sure if there's a bit of like dark berries in there, but when you actually taste it, you don't get those flavours at all, I don't think. Whereas it comes off very malty and then citrusy towards the end, quite bitter. But it is a very nice beer, I found, and definitely one that I'd actually buy it quite often, and it's fairly cheap as well. Again, from Tesco, 4 for £6.
All right. Sean, or listeners, as Sean always likes to mention Tesco's, we have to keep on saying that we are not sponsored by any company whatsoever. But for those who have tried the beer so far, do you guys have any thoughts on it?
I think it's very berry. It's very sweet.
Yes. I don't really get much berry. I find it more citrusy, especially with the hops. Whereas the maltiness I found is not quite berry, but more on the chocolatey side, I found, personally.
I have to agree with Sean in this. It's very citrusy, but I can't find anything chocolatey.
No?
Yeah, no.
I taste passion fruit. Passion fruit and red berries. That's what I taste.
I don't think it really smells sweet or chocolatey, but I think it's very tasty, and it's a beer that you can have like any time with accompanied with any meal.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's made this definitely one of my favourites so far, is that it's such an easy one to drink. It's nothing compared to one of the other ones where it's too hoppy, and the other one, I can't remember what it was called, that I just didn't like. But this one, like you say, I think could easily go with any meal, or even just to drink on its own, as we are doing right now.
Yeah, I think it's fairly easy to. It's fairly drinkable and easy on the palate. And I find the smell chocolatey. Actually, I don't find any berries in it, but I think it's kind of like bitter chocolate.
And it's decorated with a sugar skull. I mean, that's just icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say much about it. I haven't tried it. However, I do enjoy the little logo of a skull on the front. It makes me think, that's exactly what I want to drink. The sign of toxic. But
Well, it's going to be a good beer. It's quite strong. I mean, it's 6%. So, I mean, it's stronger than your normal stuff. So, why not have a skull on it?
all right. And talking about stronger stuff, let's move on to our final topic, which is about privacy and whether the government can look at your personal data. So, Nacho.
So recently, Bill Gates has asked Apple to cooperate with the FBI after the San Bernardo's attack in Southern California, where 14 people died. So one of the terrorists was found with an iPhone 5S, and Bill Gates believed that Apple could cooperate with the FBI using all the phones and all the computers and users that Apple has. So they believe that with all that information, they can cooperate with the FBI to stop any threats or attacks from terrorist attacks or from any criminal acts. So Apple decided that went to court and said like they don't wish to cooperate with the FBI because they believe that they need to protect their users' information. On the other hand, Bill Gates still asked them to continue trying to cooperate with them, and he also asked the Twitter company, Google and Facebook, who also expressed the same view as Apple. They really don't think that sharing the information from their users it will do any good for the company. Raising is like if it's really worth it to give up our information in order to protect everyone. If in Apple, Google, Facebook, and Twitter will share the same view as Bill Gates and cooperate with the authorities, definitely everyone's information will be exposed to the government, and it gives more an idea of like Big Brother in 1984, George Orwell's book, that everyone is being watched, everyone is being heard, and that idea will lead people to believe that their freedom has been taken. But the reason of why the government wants to act and use Apple's technology is to protect them, to stop any threats to the American people, and through that they need to take their freedom. Also, one of the issues that was raised is like Apple is being selfish. They don't really want to give their information to compete against Microsoft. As if Microsoft shares everyone's information and Apple does not do that, that gives a plus to Apple. So some people believe that Apple is doing is saying no to the American government in order to give something more to the buyers, and many people believe that this is not really this is not a good way to promote protection for the citizens, as they are like denying to the government information about any terrorist attack in order to earn more money and compete against Microsoft.
Okay, I mean, this case is a really interesting dilemma because obviously if Apple continues on their stance, they're going to deny or be in the way of justice because the FBI aren't asking for anyone's access at the moment. At the moment, they were just asking for the shooter of the San Bernardino attack. And so if they don't comply, they're probably going to be liable and face a huge penalty or court fine for stopping justice taking place. On the other hand, obviously, there's all the spillover effect is if they allow it once, is that just the opening of the floodgates. So I feel for Apple's position, and I do, however, think that they should comply with the government with the court order, because in this case, however, should they provide a key or any sort to the FBI or any other government agencies? Absolutely not.
I think there's an interesting question of legality when it comes to surveillance online, because each country has their security policies, they have their privacy policies, which we are tied to through being citizens, through being in countries. But then we have this online universe Like, who is to govern that? I mean, which laws are to count in this online international community? It's a very gray zone, like what is legal, what is not in this space.
Understandable. Going back to your what you just said, Nick, justice appears to be a loaded term. What is justice in this specific case? Must we not be mindful of the implications of what happens here to other people, other institutions, other private bodies in the future? I suppose what you need to answer is what is justice, and is this a request by the courts? Is it made upon just and sound law?
Well, if we're going to answer what justice...
If I made us make an addendum here, Apple haven't been charged with anything, have they? It's still in the alleged category, are we not?
Okay, so with Apple, they haven't been charged with anything. But if I wasn't clear, I was saying they will be charged if they don't comply. And if we're going to ask what justice is here, we're not going to have time for a Socratic debate on what is justice in the full term. But in this case, the court is trying to figure out what this person was thinking, how they interacted, and it's trying to decide whether this shooter was in communication with anyone else, and whether they were being influenced by an outside threat. And so in that case, it's, to me, they should comply because this is in the public interest. However, I do see, there are huge implications for this because, if they're able to break into one phone, they're able to break into all their phones and products. So the question is, do we protect the rights of the individual right here, or do we say that this case is, something we can't solve, and then we get to a position, if all I have to do is encrypt my phone and that's it, I can pretty much get away with a lot of things. I know I might be going down a slippery slope here, but we'll have to see. Sure.
I understand where it's all coming from here, but should we really be prosecuting Apple, potentially prosecuting Apple for the protection of their customers when the person just simply chose to use an Apple product? Had he chosen a Microsoft product, then it wouldn't have been an issue. They would have got the information anyway, so I don't really see why Apple is to blame.
I'll just quickly try and answer some of those questions. The reason Apple will be prosecuted in this case is because they do have the ability to go around, or they have a better knowledge, and they haven't said they are able to break the code. But what's the case is that they cannot. They feel as though they shouldn't break the code, and if they can't break the code, that's a different matter entirely, and you're completely right. You shouldn't prosecute them on that case. So we'll have to see. Now, unfortunately, we can't continue this discussion, and we're going to have to end here. So thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'll come up with a thought of the day of some sort in the comments section. Thank you.